What's on, guys? We're back with a brand new video. Today's video we'll be going over some AFL players that I think have some points to prove in the 2021 season. Now this is just a random list, no real guidelines, and I'll talk about why I think these players have points to prove. So I want you to look through my list if you feel like it was a bit harsh on a player, or there's a reason why you think a player has a point to prove. Make sure to put it in the comment section down below, because that'll be very interesting to see what you guys think have some points to prove for your sides, or a player that you know, or something like that. But before we get into that video, we're like 20 subscribers away from 400 subscribers, so we can get that done by the end of the week. They'll absolutely be amazing. Daily AFL videos, 4 PM, and since there's now a lockdown, there should be daily AFL videos, which is always good to see if you love AFL. So make sure to drop a like on this video when you're down there, turn on notifications so you know when I upload every single day, and let's get straight to the video. So first up, I've gone with Brad Hill. Now Brad Hill, out of the 5 recruits St Kilda brought in a couple of years ago, obviously he was probably the most underwhelming and probably the worst performed out of that group, even though he was the most expensive to bring in. St Kilda gave the most assets away to bring in Brad Hill, and quite frankly he's not performed to the level he did when he was at Fremantle and Hawthorn. But it is because, I feel like it's mostly because that the shortened quarters really did hinder how he plays football, because he's more of an endurance machine and that's how he beats players and wins the footy. So I feel like with another season under his belt at St Kilda, learning the game plan and all that, he should improve, but I feel like he does really have a point to prove this season. Next up, I've gone with Brodie Grundy, and Brodie Grundy just did sign a 7-year, $7 million contract, and since that happened, he has not really lived up to the production that he did have the previous 2 seasons, 2018 and 2019. 2020, he was not a bad ruckman, but he was nowhere near the All-Australian conversation. He was not at the level that he was in the past. That could be due to the hubs or something like that, but I feel like Brodie Grundy was not the same player that we knew and that Collingwood gave the 7-year, $7 million contract to. So if he performs, has another year like he did in 2020, then this contract for Collingwood's going to look very, very bad. So I hope he comes back to the Brodie Grundy we all know and love. So yeah, next up I've gone with another guy that's pretty obvious on this list, which is Josh Bruce. Obviously Josh Bruce got brought in last year's, or a couple of years ago, trade period, along with Alex Keith. But since then, he was meant to be an option to goal, and because one of their big weaknesses was their key forward position, because they had to chuck Aaron Norton there. Aaron Norton was a big success. They tried to bring in Josh Shackey from Brisbane, it did not work, and then they tried to bring in Josh Bruce from St Kilda, and he was nowhere near the player that he was at St Kilda, which is really unfortunate for him, but this should be his bounce back season, and he definitely does have a chip on his shoulder. Next up, I've gone with Brodie Franklin. Now Brodie Franklin just to get injured in the pre-season, but I think he still will be able to be available at round 1 by all reports. But this man is here back to the Lance Franklin that was known as one of the best players that ever played the AFL. Has barely played the past couple of years, which is really sad to see for one of the greats of the game to go down like he is right now. But this could be the season where he bounces back. Some people I've even seen have him in the Coleman medal discussion, which I could see, but he definitely does have a chip on his shoulder this season and needs to return to the Brodie Franklin we all know and love. Next up could be a bit of a controversial one, but I've gone Matt Rowell. Now Matt Rowell, you're probably saying this bloke's played 4 games and probably the best 4 games that you've ever seen from an 18-year-old. But I feel like that we've already put this guy in the elite conversation, and I think we're kind of jumping into it a bit early for a man that's only played 4 games. I would like to think like if someone else played 4 games like that and they weren't the #1 pick, if they would have the same reputation Matt Rowell does right now. He's a very, very hyped up player, and if he comes out and has a below average year, then people are going to look at like that these 4 games are a fluke. But right now everyone is brought in on Matt Rowell, so I feel like us that are watching the games might need to take a little bit of a step back, because we are pressuring Matt Rowell a lot. But he definitely does have a point to prove, to show that there wasn't a fluke in 4 games that he played, and that's just the man that he is. The next up, I've gone with Joe Daniher. Now, Joe Daniher has been one of the most injury-riddled players since his All-Australian year in 2017. Barely played, I think he's played 10 games in total over the past 3 years, which is obviously not great. And now he's at Brisbane, and I think he's going to have a really good year, Brisbane, but he definitely does have a point to prove this year, coming into the year, because he bring in, I think he's on decent money, pretty big dollars, so he needs and obviously Brisbane think that he's going to return back to his career best form, so he definitely does have a chip on the shoulder. Next up, I've gone with another recruit, which is Adam Treloar. Now, Adam Treloar obviously was in this big scandal in the off-season with Collingwood, and ended up getting kicked out of the club with no real reason to it, just Collingwood didn't want him anymore, it's probably very, very bad for Adam Treloar right now. He's probably not in the best headspace, but he also will have a big chip on his shoulder because he wants to prove that he's a player that should not have got kicked out of Collingwood, and he's still an elite midfielder. So I think he could return to career best form, but we'll definitely have to see what happens with Adam Treloar. Next up, I do have Jaden Stevenson, who was also involved in the Collingwood scandal in the off-season, getting kicked out after, in his first year, he won the Rising Star Award, which is pretty crazy to think, after just 2 years of football, after being the best rookie for the year, being kicked out of the football club, which is pretty crazy to think now. But he definitely does have a chip on his shoulder. This pretty much show Collingwood that they should not have chucked him out too early, and that he can still live up to the superstar potential everyone thinks Jaden Stevenson does have. I think he'll have a great year at North Melbourne, but he definitely does have a point to prove. Next up is Ben Brown, and obviously this man had an injury-riddled 2020, but eventually asked out of North Melbourne, is now at the Melbourne Football Club. He's got brought in as almost a missing piece to Melbourne that could launch him up the ladder in finals, because they've not really had a consistent guy that can kick goals ever since Jesse Hogan left. So everyone thinks this guy's the next big thing. I personally reckon he's going to be an absolute superstar for Melbourne. Now there's a bit of injuries and concerns with his knee since he arrived at the club, and he might miss round 1, but I think he will play round 1, or at least he's almost guaranteed to be back round 2. So this guy won't miss too much footy in 2021, and he has a point to prove that he is the missing link, because everyone that follows Melbourne, they have so much faith in this man, and I see why, but he still does have a huge chip on his shoulder. Last guy on this list is a person that's probably on this list every single year, which is Jordan De Goey. Now, Jordan De Goey has shown signs in 2020 and years in the past that how good of a player he is. Just haven't found that consistency. He has a few off-field issues that he's trying to deal with right now. And now at the end of the last season, he did ask for $1 million a year for multiple years. Obviously, no one offered him that, so he came back on a smaller contract for Collingwood. I think it was only for like a year or two, because he does want to get that huge payout. So he has a point to prove that he is worth that $1 million a year that he was asking for at the end of last year. So he'll have to prove to everyone that he's worth that, so he can eventually get his huge payout, which he's trying to get right now. So we'll see how good Jordan De Goey is. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to drop a like on this video if you did enjoy. Drop a subscribe. We're like 20 subscribers away from 400. I want to try to hit that by the end of the week. So without further ado, this video is over. So thanks for watching.